Yep.
Nope.
Yep.
Gotta
I'll wait a couple
yeah,
minutes. Yep.
Yep.
Will that be flashing or will it be
No,
solid?
it's solid when it's on.
Solid when it's on.
Yep. So refresh it now. Should be ready. Yep.
Here's our session.
Okay.
And
Now,
then here, very quick, and name it.
actually, I click on it. And right here where it says edit video. That's when I change up here. So when you're looking for it online.
What do you want to call that? What do you want to
I
call
just
it?
call it Academy.
Academy?
For today's date.
Academy?
Cat is. Go back and put. Go back up.
Yep. So 7:12.
Okay.
Good.
Then you're gonna save it.
Yep.
Then I go back to the other screen there.
Fresh up. Yeah.
Okay. I always save it under Florida Presbyterian Homes because it will save it to the playlist.
I didn't even read the chat.
I did. Yeah, I went back and saved it.
Oh, you just click it and X out there.
Yeah. Now when I
And then
get
if you point
here,
down here, it'll say live.
so what I do here, I go back and I actually minimize the screen because if not, sometimes you'll get feedback. So I just do this. Once I got it going.
Okay.
Okay.
Who's
Now.
going to shut it off?
Oh, yeah.
Responsible to hit that little green button.
Steve, we gotta give you a job for our very end to stop the YouTube feed. We need one person to stop the YouTube live stream at the very end.
Just hit that green button. So you see we have a green button and a solid blue light. You will just hit that green button and then solid
Looks
blue
yellow
light.
to me.
Then hit the yellow button.
Okay.
The one on the left.
All right. Hit that and that's it.
Yeah, and you are live. You're streaming now, so don't say any bad words.
Oh.
Unless you want to be held accountable for it.
All right. So I can go up there and introduce her.
Yeah, you're ready to roll. I'm going to let you go. That's all you got to do is hit that button on the left there. Yeah, you're on 7:33 right now.
Hey, May. Good afternoon. Am I on? Welcome. Welcome, everyone.
Hey, Doug.
We are taking a moment to answer a problem. So maybe I should tell a joke. It's not on? Got the green light. Like this? I mean, I've got to swallow it. Okay, people. We're on. We're being watched on 733, and we're being on YouTube. And we're going to have to take off all this noise. Come on in. Come on in. All right, you can't. Okay. Well, let me say one more time, welcome. It's good to see faces, even though they're half covered. because we haven't seen faces in 16 months. And it's really, really been rough on the Academy. We've only had 3 or 4, and they've just been on YouTube. They've been Zoomed by people like myself and Bob Tebby and others. So it's good to be live and well. And a good place to start is one of our own people here that everybody knows, Ray Berquin. Now, Ray can take her mask off so she can be heard. She's going to, maybe. Are you ready? She's almost ready.
Do I just, and we're just staying where you are?
Well, or you need a podium?
That would be nice, yes.
The little light one over there, maybe. Ray and Bob Berquin, who've been here now several years, and everybody knows them pretty well, I think. But they were, for years, traveling around mainly in the east of the world with USAID. And apparently, lots of funny things happened on the way, because looking at her book cover, it looks pretty funny how they're moving about. So I'm anxious to hear what she's going to tell us. So Ray, without any kind of further ado, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can I have the microphone?
Oh, she wants a mic too.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jean, and thanks to everyone who made this possible. And I'm so glad to see faces out there. I know who you are, even if you have a mask on.
You have to swallow that mic almost.
Oh, I do have a soft voice. So raise your hand or stand up if you can't hear me. Bob and I met at the University of Cincinnati. We were both in the College of Business Administration. We learned the trickle-down theory. You know that? You pour the money in at the top of the country, and it'll trickle down to the people that need food. Never works. We went overseas and found out that it didn't work. We came back to the US and found out that it doesn't work here either. Bob and I dated steadily for 4 years before we got married. We've been married for 63, so we've known each other a long, long time. He came from a small town on the Ohio-Indiana border, not far from Cincinnati, and I was the city girl from Cincinnati. His town was Harrison, Ohio. You know Harrison? Good. It's bigger now than it used to be. Bob had a dream to build a sailboat as soon as he saw the Popular Mechanics magazine that had all the information in it. Popular Mechanics on how to build a sailboat. So he did. He used his dad's tools. We sewed this huge sail. There were 2 of them. We sewed them on our mother's inadequate sewing machines, but anyway, we got a sail. Neither of us knew how to sail, and those directions were not in Popular Mechanics. So the first time we took the boat out, we just had all the tools, and we just floated to see where the leaks were. We had a lot of fun with that sailboat. Then, somewhere along the way, we saw the movie Around the World in 80 Days. And we could not wait to go overseas. and see what was going on. We didn't have any children, so when the time came, the opportunity came for us to go overseas, we did. We jumped at it. We found out that people are the same all over the world, really. We all have the same needs, desires. You know, we hear about the radicals that are on television and causing such terrible catastrophes, but most people are not like that. Most people are really people. So we found that out. Actually, that's about all I was going to say, because this is a very short book. Some of you have read it, and it's just incredible how many adventures we had. We were and I wrote this book. This is the very short version. I had a long version with more colorful things in it that perished somewhere. It's gone. I started writing it 45 years ago. So it's been through power failures overseas, which are worse than the ones here. The computer has crashed, we've moved. So this was all I could salvage, but I just had to write it. That's all. I just had to write it. So the countries that we were in were, first we went to Japan. That was with the General Accounting. We went to Japan first with the General Accounting Office. And the General Accounting Office, now called the General Accountability Office, is tasked by Congress with investigating U.S. funds spent everywhere in the world. So that was Bob's job. He was an auditor to find out what was going on. And this was after World War II, shortly, and so there were lots of things, lots of funds being spent all around. We were allowed to go to Japan by boat, an ocean liner. It sounds better than it was. The ocean liner that we were on, it was an American President line. The ships had been freighters, and then when World War II came, they were troop transport, and then they were remodeled a little bit, and probably a lot, and they were ocean liners. They were cruise ships. If you saw one of them today next to one of the modern cruise lines, you would think that we were in a rowboat. So the reason we were allowed to go this wonderful way from San Francisco to Japan was that in those days, we started out in 1963, and the planes could not fly very far. So to get from San Francisco to Japan, you would have to do a lot of island hopping, and it would take several days, and it really wouldn't be a nice trip. So we were lucky. We got to go, and we got to be on first class. That was kind of amazing. There were 3 auditors that were on the same ship, and one of them had his family with him, his wife and 3 children. So the ship had opportunities for them. It had a laundry, and we were allowed to go in and wash our clothes, which I'm sure most first-class people can't do. But the seawater was salty, And so our clothes got very, very clean. And they were rinsed in regular water. So that was good. There was a swimming pool. Every time the boat rolled or pitched or yawed, the water sloshed. It was like swimming in a bathtub or a washing machine. But that's okay. We were on a ship. We were happy. The food was wonderful, as always. And there was a Japanese man from the Japan Travel Bureau that gave us Japanese lessons if we wanted them. And Natalie, the other wife, and I really wanted Japanese lessons. So we studied hard, and the men that were going to audit in English just paid no attention to us. So, and on the way from San Francisco, you have a stop at Hawaii. So we got to come in the early morning and see Diamond Head. That was exciting. And then we took a tour of Hawaii on a bus. That was great. And then later on, we got to Yokohama in Tokyo, near Tokyo. So that's about all I was going to say. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Could you go through the chapters from the table of contents and just
Okay.
tell what it's all about?
Okay. We lived in Japan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, Kenya, Sudan, and the Philippines. So, and Bob changed jobs during this time. He and the auditors worked so hard at the Far East branch of the General Accounting Office. And when he went back to the U.S., he was working in the the General Accounting Office that issued the reports that they made, the audit reports. And some of the reports hadn't been issued 2 years after all of that hard work that went into them, and the auditors met the deadlines and stayed away very long just to finish, and he was very disappointed. That was a sad thing. So he decided to change agencies, and he went with the United States Agency for International Development, and that's USAID, Agency for International Development. And that's how we got to the rest of the countries. The GAO is, if you read the newspapers or the news on your telephone very carefully, you'll find out they'll say the GAO is investigating this or that. Believe me, they need to be investigated. There's an awful lot of, in the first meeting today, the chat with Joe, we were talking about the need to, for the homes to know just what the income of the people that live here, so they don't get a surprise of we have to have, all of a sudden we can't say, well, my money's all gone, and same thing. It happens all the time. I must say, coming to the homes was a very lucky circumstance. We had heard of Tebby's, and we had heard of Mary Wheelis. We've heard of the Wheelises. We were in Tokyo at different times. Charlie Ratliff, we didn't know, but he'd been in, we'd all been in Lahore, Pakistan at different times. Charlie had been there too. I never figured out we overlapped some and we didn't. The reason we didn't know Tebby's and Wheelis's is, well, originally we were not missionaries, so that's one reason. The other was that our children were different ages because, you know, we went to the same church, we lived in the same city, but it was very different. And so I'm glad to see Ruth here. Yes.
What sort of work did Bob do in all these places? Were they all different or were they similar?
What sort of work did you do in different places?
Take your mask off.
The work that we did was to audit U.S. Dollars that were provided by the government. My wife is putting it back together. We had various projects that the United States government provided to various nations. And we would look and see whether or not those funds were used in accordance with the agreement with those countries. And that was our main purpose. And if a project was supposed to be started at a certain time and certain objectives were obtained, then that's what we were trying to find out. And if they weren't obtained, why then we reported that back to Congress. That was the people who we were responsible to at that time. AID, well, with the GAO.
Which was your favorite place to work, Bob?
Favorite place and country to work? Well, place to work, I enjoyed AID the most. As far as the country that we were in, I think Ray and I agree that it was Indonesia. People are very friendly, they're very kind, they're helpful, and they're most of the time peaceful. But in some parts of the country, like Sumatra, why there's not quite so peaceful up there. They're a different religion for one thing, and their expectations of their government are different.
I got one more. What was that animal that was on the sheet you handed out, the colored sheet, and pulling some sort of a thing behind him? Oh, the oxen. Ox, okay. Thank you. Yeah.
That was an easy one.
This is an ox cart. I've never seen one. Okay. And this is the way our household goods arrived in Pakistan. Oh. Is your book in our library?
It will be when we accession books at the end of the month. Thank you.
It's for sale over
Fourth
here,
Friday.
that's why I'm sitting here, $5 a book. It's very good.
I'll read to you what Bob did in the Philippines. There's a UN organization, Consultative Group of International Agricultural Research, CGIAR. And I was so glad when we got to go to the rice research because I love rice. Nobody in the US liked rice but me. I was the only one. I used to make a pot of it before we even left anywhere. And he had a really good job there. I'll tell you all this stuff that he was in charge of. It was wild. It was a wild place because this is a place where that job had been vacant for 1 or 2 years before Bob got there. So the Filipinos, who are very good, had wonderful plans for the money from the International Rice Research Institute, and they had very good perfected systems. Let's see. Okay, Bob was involved in every aspect of Erie management: motor pool, fire department, laboratories, libraries, security guards, purchasing, maintenance, personnel, construction, telephones, guest house, cafeterias, dormitories, laundry, swimming pool, and tennis courts, mail, legal, audit, travel, and more. That was it.
She has a comment, having read the book. I really feel that you deserve as much credit as Bob does. Having read this book, you deserve as much credit in what you had to deal with being at home with what you had to handle, and I don't know that people understand that. So I really respect both of your works. But I have a question for Bob. Our experience with USAID was that when USAID leaves, the country realizes how poor it is because it's been propped up by USAID money. And when it disappears, then they become starkly aware that they are not as rich as they thought they were, and the poverty is extremely great. So there are pros and cons to USAID in the way people are taught about the funds they receive when they leave.
I'm just going to say, before USAID and any country would make an agreement about aid, they both had to agree on what was in that contract. And some countries, we focused on the poverty, the food situation, well, yeah, all of it. And the countries, one of them said, we don't want food. We're not worried about that. We need jet planes because of the terrible Indians next door. So, you know, that's part of it, and part of the putting money in at the top. So I think these days things are different, but I hope so. Did you want to say anything about that?
Right? What did you do while he was doing all of this? What were you busy doing?
Well, you can read the book. This was, I can't explain it.
Did you have a job? Did you work at home?
Well, we had 3 children.
Okay, you never mentioned those.
Well, we adopted 2 from Taiwan, and then we had our own child. So when we went to Pakistan, we had 3. We went to Japan with none and came home with 2. If it was, the women had, there was always an American Women's Club that was, fabulous. They were always well organized, and they did a lot of good. They had field trips. It was a great thing. You could volunteer for that. You could, in Pakistan, I volunteered at the hospital because, you'll just have to read the chapter. It's too much to tell. Yes.
In what country were women treated as the worst, I should say?
In what country were the women treated equally, or at least a little bit? Not most of them, and this was a long time ago. We started 60 years ago, and I think they're still they're still having troubles, but gee, these days, every country is, well, you know, we didn't have the internet. If my parents called us, it was a horrible expense, and we expected that somebody had died, and the vice versa if we ever tried to call them. So, you know, the communication system has really, it's really good. So.
Just curious, from your readings, which country that you visited seems to have made the most progress in regard to how they treat women?
The most progress? You know, that's hard to say. We were mostly in Muslim countries. It was, with Japan, the women didn't count. But I think they're making themselves known these days. Pakistan, well, they're right next to Afghanistan, if that helps you, between Iran and Afghanistan. Bangladesh, actually, if I've read, we can't stop reading about international things. We just can't. But in Bangladesh, that Henry Kissinger called the basket case of the world, is doing better than India. So, you know, it's crazy. I mean, the country's government makes a big difference. Now, I keep running through too many things.
You said Indonesia was where you seem to have the best situation, but they're also Muslim, right?
Indonesia got a lot of influence from the traders, Muslim and Hindu, that would go down the islands. And Indonesia, Indonesian Muslims are not the same in every country. Christians are not the same in every country. It's different. So the Muslims in Indonesia, at least when we were there, it was when Suharto was in charge, and he kept a tight fist on everything. But the Muslims there and Christians would intermarry, which was, I mean, you know, that's astounding. And another thing, the Indonesians of Chinese descent were turning to Christianity there. So, you know, but after we left, of course, they had a lot more trouble in Indonesia. But the people knew Dutch because it was Dutch East Indies, and so they had that, and they had a language brought by the traders, which is a trading language, it's Malaysian and Indonesian, Bahasa, and it's very specific. It's a good trading language. It's a good language. If child it's easy. Child is anak, 2 children, anak. You know? It was a very easy language, a very easy, and the people, as Bob said, they were very, very pleasant people, really. They were always smiling. They might be a thief, but they'd be smiling all the time. That's very nice to see. So, and there was a lot to do in Indonesia. There was a very good school, and a lot of things to do. Yes.
I wanted to ask about health care. I wondered how you would rate the country
health care, well, this was a long time ago. So when we went to Pakistan, it was the Presbyterian ministers in Lahore that had the hospital. And if any of you know the, let's see, what's the college? The Foreman Christian College, which is a wonderful place. That's where Rowena Tebby's younger son was in charge.
For some new people that are here, we had a whole lot of the missionaries from there living here in this campus.
That's why it was such a surprise to us when we got here. And Bob Noble, he was the first one I met, and we were talking about Pakistan on that very first conversation. Let's see, health. The Indian, well, their family planning was big when we were there. That was something that probably nobody thinks about anymore. But the Muslims were afraid in Pakistan and Bangladesh that the Americans were trying to do away with baby Muslims, which isn't really what we were trying to do. We were trying to help their country. And health care. Sudan. Indonesia actually had better hospitals, but they, if possible, they sent people to Singapore because they were the last word in hospitals.
In regard to your work, I read that in some countries you had 3 servant kind of people, maids or whatever, and I thought, man, that's pretty nice. But you started at minus 25 in regard to not clean water and flooding in your houses and bugs in your houses and market trips that were challenging. So it's not that you sat around and, you know, had mint juleps. You had maids and servants, but it wasn't a luxury at all. So it was very necessary.
Thank you. We had to have 5 servants in Pakistan. In Bangladesh, we only needed 4, which was really very nice. And anyway.
Why the 5? What did they have?
In Lahore, there were you had a cook and a cook helper, and he cleaned the house, which is wonderful, and did the dishes and things. You had an ayah for the children, and a night watchman that sometimes slept a lot. And in Indonesia, it was a joke because I think they carried he was so drunk they carried our night watchman away once. And then we had a sweeper, which was always a woman, and she would come and clean the dust and the mud from around the house. Now, with the dust storm, you got a whole lot more dust than usual. And so usually after a dust storm, there was some rain, and then you'd have mud. So, you know, she was necessary. In Pakistan, in Bangladesh, you had a gardener too. In Bangladesh, the gardener was a Christian, and he didn't mind sweeping the house. But they don't have dust storms there. So at least they didn't then. They had horrible cyclones. The cyclones come up the Bay of Bengal, and so there've been some horrible things that happened. So anything else? Okay. It's 3:35.
Any last questions? No? How long did it take to write the book? I remember some of her writing.
I started the book at least 45 years ago. What was really hard was when I finally decided to publish, because I'm not getting any younger, I had to do it Kindle's way. And anybody that starts a book today can get their formatting from Kindle and go, it'll be easy. I did not. It was trial and error, and I spent an awful lot of time editing my book, which I had already edited thousands of times before.
Anybody else? Well, it's great to see all of you. Really see you. How many are here? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 18, 20, 22, 24. Almost 30 people. Hey. That's good. Give yourself an applause. And for Ray and Bob, I'm glad you finally got it done. So we had, just before COVID, a class where we were working together on writing our stories. And so several were working hard, and then all of a sudden we couldn't meet anymore. And I think Ray was the only one who kept pushing through and actually got it done. It looked there for a while like we might have 5 or 6 books. So you want to say something else?
Well, Jean got me started, and I would not have written about my mother, but I always wondered what were the pressures when she grew up, because we were Depression kids. And so I think I've got it straight. In 1917, it was the World War I. 18 was the Spanish flu. 19 was the women got, 20 the women got the vote. 19 was prohibition, and the women got the vote. So, your parents all must have had this very same situation, which was really, it was a tough time to grow up. But here we are, we're repeating history.
Well, let me tell you this. Yes?
When do we expect to hear from your latest book?
I would tell you if I knew. It's in the editing process. After the editing process is the formatting process. After that, it's the printing process. After that, I don't know. I would hope that it would be out by the end of August. The one that you folks would probably enjoy the most would be the one called The View from Brindley Mountain, because it deals with our lives in the 40s and 50s. And most of us probably shared, even though we were in different parts of the country, probably shared because we shared the same TV programs once there was TV. We shared the same comic strips. We shared the same Superman. We shared the same radio programs on Saturday night. Afternoon, after chores, we had the Lone Ranger and Sky King, and we wanted to play games. The girls hopped scotch and jumped rope, and the guys shot marbles and with BB guns tried to hit birds but missed. Rascals they were. That's just the beginning, because we all went to school. We all had teachers, some good, some bad. But supposedly, there's still a copy, there she is. They're still available. There's 1 or 2 copies.
Residential authors are in their own bookcase under the south window in the room next door to the enlargement machine that's up there. They're not in the regular stacks.
Did you get that? Did you understand what you said? There's a little alcove, if you will, that goes out.
In the room where the table and sofa is.
And then there's a etagere. There's a, what do you call it? Bookcase. There's a bookcase there under the window. And if it isn't there, it's because somebody walked away and didn't bring it back. So we keep.
Sign the card when you take it out.
So if you go and it's not there, you call her. Say, find out where that book is, please. I want to reserve it. I'm just kidding. The guys would like the one that deals with the Civil War. Well, yeah, I mean, not necessarily. I went there in my brain. Anyway, now you would, and I wrote in dialect.
I love it.
So,
Wonderful book.
oh, did you hear that testimonial? Anyway, the next, in 2 weeks, we're off schedule. Normally, the Academy for 11 years has met first and third Mondays. This is the second Monday, and so to do in 2 weeks, we will have D. Sewell. Do you remember D. Sewell? D. Sewell, for a while, was running our dining area. She was much too bright for that, so she's now teaching at Polk State Community College. Sorry? Her name is Dee, D-E-E, Sewell, S-O-U-L-E-S. She was, she didn't promote herself, so you wouldn't know how bright she really was or is. But she's kept in touch, and she's been doing some PowerPoints on history. I have not gotten in touch with her lately because she's been on vacation. So I don't know what her topic is going to be, but I know that you'll enjoy it. You'll enjoy coming out. Today is the 12th, so that means 26th, right? If we do anything in August, I don't know. It may that we can find, it's hard to get programs in August, always has been, but we might. I know that Bob Tebby has done a YouTube ready to throw on and show the public on birds. So we might say he won't be here because they're up trying to stay cool up in Maine, but we could still have the Academy, just not face-to-face. So we'll talk about that. And if there's another one, we'll work on it. But anyway, in 2 weeks. So thank you very much, and thank you, Ray, and go home and have a good afternoon.